Hi, this is Debbie Davis for Outlier Legal, and we're so happy that you joined us here today. Today, we're going to be talking about the Digital Nomad VISA. I know many of you that are here for this webinar have been waiting to hear more about this for quite some time, in some cases almost a year. And we've assembled several of us at Outlier here today to go over all the ins and outs of the Digital Nomad VISA, so everyone can understand what they need to do, what they want to do, if it's the right thing for you. So here with us today, the first person I wanted to introduce was Alfredo Abrego. And Alfredo, could you please introduce us to the members of your team that are here? If you remember, Alfredo has been with us before. Alfredo is the immigration team manager for Outlier.
Hi, well, first, thank you for joining all. Yes, we have actually in here, we have Ana Paula Peñaranda and Natalia Solórzano, who are part of our Immigration Service Coordinators team. And we also have Stephanie Valverde, who is part of the Special Immigration team. She's an immigration specialist here in Outlier. Another crew member that we have, very important, is Laura Magnifico. She's one of our Outlier experience managers, and she's basically in charge of our first contacts with all of our clients. And well, least but not last, we have Rafael Valverde, who is our CEO in Outlier Legal. And well, basically, we are very thrilled to have you all here in this webinar.
Thank you, Alfredo. That was perfect. Thanks for helping me with that. One thing I don't want to miss out on is, could you just tell everybody just a little bit about the history of Outlier and how Outlier came to be?
Sure. Well, Outlier started 10 years ago. Basically, it started, well, according this to Rafa's histories, they started, or their first office was in their house in Covano, Guanacaste. They were actually damaged, or their house was damaged due to an earthquake there. So they started basically from scratch, and they have been growing and growing until now. Right now, I don't remember the exact number, but I do believe we are like around 80 employees that Rafa has and Outlier has. So it is quite amazing on how when you have actually the determination and you want to do something great for not only for you but for the other persons in the world. In this case, all the expats that wants to come here to Costa Rica and live. How you can just start from nothing and basically build a very strong and powerful company. So
I think you left out, and Rafa, I wanted you to talk about this, the way you got to Costa Rica. You drove, right?
Correct. And well, first and foremost, hello to everybody. And today, the members of the Outlier Legal team, and also to the people who are joining us today in this webinar. And to answer your question, David, correct. I am a U.S. citizen. I lived in the U.S. for many years. I'm a naturalized U.S. citizen. And I went to law school there, was living there at the time. And then I met who was going to be my wife, Don Dromer, who is also founder of the company. And we drove from the US to Costa Rica. So yes, like we did that. It was quite an experience, very memorable. I recommend it to everybody.
How many miles was that?
Oh, I do not remember a lot. I don't know.
Can you tell us a little bit, like, Outlier was born out of that trip, or did you know when you were coming that you were going to start this amazing company? Like, how did that happen?
Well, we didn't plan on this, like when very much like many people joining us here today in the call, in the webinar, and also many people that come to Costa Rica. Don and I decided to, I don't know, take an adventure. I was born and raised in Costa Rica, but I had not lived here or there, you know, and for many years. And So we had other plans, and by the time that Donna and I met, we decided to abandon the plans that we had separate, and we figured out we thought, hey, let's do something together. So considering that I was born and raised for the majority of my life in Costa Rica, we decided hey, let's go to Costa Rica. It is familiar, and let's figure out what we're gonna do there. And initially we thought that we will go to a small town in the Caribbean, like in Cahuita, and just open a little practice there so that we can just put beer in the fridge. I had it was very difficult for me to get a job in Costa Rica because, notwithstanding the fact that I went to school in Costa Rica, I had no experience in Costa Rican law. I had gone to school in the US and worked there for non-for-profits and other organizations. So anyhow, we started from scratch, and just we decided to try to develop a service and a system in which, considering that both of us are coming from the US, we tried to do something that was familiar. We tried to do something that we would be able to explain to people from the US and other countries how things work in Costa Rica, which is madness, but how to present that in a way that will be somehow eloquent or understood for our audience, being expats. So we didn't plan on it, and people were thankfully receptive to what we were doing. And then just over a period of time, just kept growing for on the one hand with the thanks of the thanks of our patrons, our clients, the people that we serve, and it just being like that and rolling with the punches, and also some growing pains, but we're here, and today, we're trying to present this new thing that Costa Rica has. Also, for the benefit of the people that are trying to make Costa Rica home, and in this case, perhaps temporarily.
So really, you came to Costa Rica almost as your own as the nomad, coming there with essentially like lots of people on this call. You're either haven't come or are thinking about coming, and many of them may have sold everything they own to drive to Costa Rica here pretty soon. But one thing I want to make sure everybody realizes, and I wanted you to just touch on, this is your 10-year anniversary. You've been doing this 10 years now. That's amazing.
Correct. Yeah, we just this past month of June, we reached at the 10-year mark. So yeah, it's amazing, and,
yeah.
and I'm surprised we're still around. So we're very happy to help everybody here.
How many expats do you think you've helped so far? I mean, what's your guess?
Well, I'm going to divide this perhaps in two parts, because I did immigration prior to doing this in Costa Rica. But with Outlier Legal, over the past 10 years, with cases, there are cases that people come, with families, but with cases about 3,000 cases, but data represents, about 10,000 people in Costa Rica over the past 10 years. As there's comes spouses, couples, families with children. But prior to that, I did immigration services, immigration law in the United States. And then for a brief period of time, I worked for an international law firm doing immigration law in Latin America. So in the US, in total, I think that I did that for about 5 years. And during that period of 5 years, I had about 1,000 cases that I work with, and then during the brief period of time doing immigration services in Latin America, in Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, and some other countries there, Uruguay, Peru, and some small cases there. Probably that would be an additional 600 cases, and also with families.
Well, let's get to this digital nomad conversation. I know people are really wanting to learn more about that. Can you kind of start this off by telling people, what is it? What has the government decided a digital nomad visa is?
Well, first and foremost, this digital nomad is not by Costa Rican design. By that, what I mean is that it is a trend that has been growing over recent years. And considering our audience, like the people that are joining us here today, perhaps like many of you are familiar with an increasing trend, like the world is becoming a lot more mobile. Certainly the COVID pandemic put a stop to everything, to that mobility. Everybody had to stay where they were. Some people were able to stay home. Some people were stuck in another country. But anyhow, up to the pandemic, and now that the travel restrictions has been stopped or ended, like a mobility increase again. And the point that I want to make is that since the 1990s, moving forward since the 1990s, global mobility has increased a lot. There's a lot more people considering that travel has become more accessible. Air travel, in the prior to the 90s, for people to travel, it was a lot more difficult. It was a lot more expensive. Many airlines came to the scene, and in the case of the US, airlines were deregulated, and that made it more accessible for many airlines to flourish. And basically worldwide, travel became more accessible. And also, we enter, notwithstanding the current turmoils that we find worldwide, the world also became a little, let's say, a more friendly. It was more accessible to travel to Latin America, to Africa, to Southeast Asia. Some governments became more stable. Some economies became more developed. And along with these, also regulations, in this case, immigration regulations, and travel, tourist regulations became more accessible, more friendly. So the point being is that global mobility has increased over past decades. And so traditionally, over the past century, moving to another country was a big ordeal. Is that an immigration was a big ordeal. People traditionally thought that immigration was for neglected populations, people trying to make ends meet, moving to another country for economic opportunities. In the US and Canada and the rest of Latin America, we see that in the turn of the century, a lot of people from Ireland and Italy moved to the United States and Canada. Many German immigrants moved also to the United States. And we see, again, when I'm saying the turn of the century, I'm thinking about the 1900s, I'm getting 1910s, 1920s, people moving from Europe to South America, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Mexico, so on and so forth. And at that time, it was very complicated, very challenging, and it was primarily for economic situations. Now, again, I'm fast forward into the 1990s and onwards, as people are becoming more mobile, they also governments started to modify their immigration regulations, their immigration laws. So then going back to this, what is the digital nomad? This is something fairly new in the immigration spectrum worldwide. Some countries realize that perhaps there's people that want to come here, not for the remainder of their lives, maybe for a short period of time. And considering that work has also become, as we are adapting to new technologies, as societies and economies adapt to new technologies, we have been able to become a lot more mobile. Before, the idea of going to work was, let's say in the 1900s, in the turn of the century, going to a factory, and then from there going to an office space. And then we have all of these big office buildings where people go to work. But now we realize that we don't need to go to the office. Now we can just either work from home or work from wherever, thanks to the internet. So then, the governments have been catching up to that and enabling regulations that allow people just to work from wherever they are. They can do digital work, and that's working from a computer, having access to the internet, and not having to go to an office. So there is some countries that have enacted digital nomad regulations worldwide, like Thailand, Singapore, Portugal, in Latin America, we see some countries trying to make a change too, like including Panama, and then Costa Rica caught speed to that. So going back to your question, what is the digital nomad? So again, like Costa Rica just like added that to the repertoire, and the intention of the government is to make it easy, and I'll do quote unquote easy for digital nomads to relocate to Costa Rica for a period of up to 2 years. So they want to make it easy, and we see digital nomads compared to other types of residency. We see that more easy or less burdensome when it comes to requirements compared to many other residencies or to many other immigration benefits that are out there, because the digital nomad is not a residency. So there are residencies, as it happens in many countries worldwide, for people who are planning to stay for the long term. Long term being, like more than 2 years. People who would like to stay like for 5 years, 10 years, or maybe indefinitely, or for permanently. Digital nomads are for people that are planning to stay for a short period of time, 1 year, and in the case of Costa Rica, no more than 2 years. So that's what the digital nomad is. It's like for people who are planning to stay here for a very short period of time, not up to 2 years.
If I could, Rafa, real quick, I want to launch just a little question and answer for the people that are here on the webinar today. It's asking them that exact question. Are people planning on living in Costa Rica more than 2 years? Because you just touched on something that's very important, I think, for people to understand, that the digital nomad visa is only good for 1 year and they can only renew it for another year, right?
That is correct, and Alfredo, and I believe that there is for the renewal a term limit on how long people can be outside. Is that right?
Yes. Well, actually, the limit that you can be actually outside within this 2 years time frame is you're going to be outside for more than 6 months or 180 days. So that is something that you need to actually pay attention to in order so that you cannot get your category canceled as per immigration.
Right. And so based on the answers here, I wanted to ask this, or like essentially, because we have the majority of the folks here, 71%, are planning on being in Costa Rica more than 2 years. So you can't, right? You cannot be in the digital nomad while you're waiting to also apply for another residency category. You're either one or the other. So it could be that many of these people really should, apply for a different category, such as rentista.
Well, the yes, like to a degree, but if people are, let's have like perhaps 3 scenarios of people. Mm-hmm. People that already have maybe a residency in process, and for whatever category, rentista, investor, whatever other categories that are out there. There is that scenario of people, and there's the people, that do not have any categories, and they could be divided in two. I mean, they don't have file for any type of residence or any other immigration category, and there's 2 types, let's say there, like the people that are planning short term and the people that are planning long term. So with the first scenario, if there's people who are already who have already filed or are about to file, for residency, the best thing to do is just like to stay on that track. Mm-hmm. And if they have already filed for residency, they cannot file for the digital nomad, because then it will void the application that has already been filed for other residency. And then the people who have not filed for any immigration category, as I mentioned, like there could be 2 options: people that might be planning on staying for the long term or for the short term. And so people who are planning to stay in Costa Rica for the short term, yeah, go ahead and file for that whatever category, like in this case, let's say I stay, in this case, the digital nomad, and no conflict at all, in their plans or in the process, just because they're planning on staying in the country for a short period of time. But the people that are planning to stay for a long term, and but they're not quite there yet. They're not ready. Like I'm planning on moving to Costa Rica within the next year, and I'm planning, or I'm here, I'm in Costa Rica, but I'm not ready to file. I want to figure out some things, like people that are in the middle, of that trend zone, in that threshold. It is possible for them to file for digital nomads, so they can have a status while they perhaps figure out what to do, and then later, and if they think like, all right, I'm going to file for residency, then they can file. Like the point here that I want to make is that if you have something in process, or if you have something already approved, and you start something else, the latter trumps the former. So if I started a immigration process, or I already have residency, and I file for digital nomad, that is going to void or to cancel what I already have. So with that thought process, if I already file, if I'm going to file, or if I file in the future for digital nomad and I have it in my pocket, that's fine. But then if I later change for some residency, investor, pensionado, marriage, whatever it is, that's fine. It is going to terminate what I already have. Any later residency that I file, or immigration category that I file, it is going to cancel the previous one that I had. Point being is that there is something called a change of category. I can change from one category to another at any point in time. That's not a problem. But it is not possible to have two categories at the same time. Whatever I file later is going to cancel the previous one. I hope that answered your question, Debbie.
Yes, it does. And I think many people have been wondering that very same thing. And really, needed to understand, because you were just mentioning that you can change categories between pensionado, rentista, investor. But if you change categories from digital nomad to pensionado, that's fine, except your digital nomad is going to be gone while you wait for your pensionado. So can you tell everybody, based on the law, like who does the law consider a digital nomad? Like self-employed, that kind of thing. Who are these people?
The main requirement, it is not basically, the main requirement is just income. Like a $3,000 for one person, $4,000 for a family. So that's what the law considers a digital nomad. Going back to whether it should be self-employed, or is an employee of a company, that's not relevant according to the immigration regulations. And I emphasize, and it's not relevant to the immigration regulations. But something to keep in mind, and this is a very big, perhaps, point for people to keep in mind, is that there is, and I try to explain this to people in general when it comes to understanding Costa Rican law, and not only the law, but also the reality. There is what the law says, and then there is the reality, what actually happens. But according to the law, it is not relevant whether people are self-employed or they work for a company, where they're employees. What matters is the income, providing proof of that income. We need to wait and see how the immigration department is going to process things. The immigration department is not perfect, and quite frankly, they make a lot of mistakes and generate a lot of issues for the users. So we need to wait and see how they're going to process that, because we expect that the processing of these nomads, and consider that they're new, it's a new thing in the law for them. So we expect that some issues might arise. We keep our fingers crossed that the immigration department hopefully will comply with the regulations. To put it this way, we are cautiously optimistic. But to answer your question, Debbie, who the government or who the law considers to be a digital nomad: people who can provide evidence that they receive $3,000 per month for an individual and $4,000 for a family. And now the question is, like, how do you prove that? It is through bank statements. It is required to produce 12 bank statements, 12, for the previous 12 months prior to filing. It doesn't have to be for the previous tax year, and it doesn't have to be for the previous year. If people are going to file today, it should be for the trailing 12 months as of today. It shouldn't be for the tax year 2021. So then like those bank statements should provide evidence that the person has an income of $3,000. And again, for a family of $4,000. We notice a discrepancy in the law and the regulation, that the law says that for a family, it is possible for spouses or partners, if there is a common law marriage, it is possible to combine the income for the two of them to prove $4,000. However, that's not mentioned in the regulation. The regulation establishes that the principal must provide income for $3,000 for their own or $4,000 for a family. So with this discrepancy, we can anticipate that there might be some issues in the processing.
Right.
My advice would be for people to provide income, just one source of income for the entire family, whoever the principal will be.
So I wanted to ask Alfredo and thanks Rafa so much. That was so good. And I know everybody appreciates so much getting all that information, because it can be kind of confusing, right? By the time you've read all the different information on the internet. But Alfredo, could you kind of go over a little bit, I guess what I would call the nuts and bolts of this, as far as like, what do people need? Like the application and the fee and just the different things that people are going to have to get together to do this.
Sure. Okay, well, according to the regulation, the requirements are, well, basically they mention 5. However, one is actually needed to enter to the country. So one is the form. This is a form that is already in trámite ya. Basically, it's a very personal information form where you submit it, they actually approve it, and then you actually file the other documentation. Then you have $100 of government fees to apply. This is quite an interesting thing. They are just requesting images of the bio page and an image of the entry stamp. They're not requesting, as in any other category with or application with the DGME, they're not requesting a certified copy of. They're just requesting images. That's the only thing they are mentioning. So that's an interesting thing, and it could maybe or maybe not provoke, as Rafa mentioned, some issues there. So maybe we can anticipate some problems with these images. They are requesting either a consular or restricted visa. That's depending on your country. If you are in the 3rd or 4th group in the visas ruling. And well, however, this is mentioning here as a requirement. However, this is actually required to enter to the country. So that's an important thing. And the other thing that they are requesting, as Rafa mentioned, is, well, the bank statements of the previous year, that you're proving that you are receiving either $3,000 as a person applying on their own, or $4,000 for families. This bank statements, and this is a very important thing, must go also with an affidavit. All right. So, and these documents need to be, if it is coming from a bank abroad, the documents must be apostille. Okay. So okay, that's an important thing to have into consideration. And there is a twist here, because if you don't want to present the bank statements plus the affidavit, you also have the chance to actually provide a CPA certification, proving exactly the same thing, that you have received in the previous 12 months an income of $3,000 or $4,000. This is just for the main applicant, and right, in case basically if you have a dependent here, spouse, kids, the person living in common in law, basically is, well, the marriage certificate to prove the link between you both, right? The birth certificate for the minors, and well, it is a common law certification provided by the government institution in case that you are living with this within this common law. And there is, it also mentions for people who are under 25, mostly I do think is required for maybe the parents, who wants to come with their sons and stuff, they need to prove with an affidavit that they are also living and with this person who is going to apply as a digital nomad.
So Alfredo, I need to go back for a second, if you don't mind, just so I make sure I am understanding a couple of things. So when you say consular visa, is what you're meaning is that they've done whatever that they are supposed to actually be granted entry into the country with or without the digital nomad?
Right. This consular visa is for those countries who are in the third group of the visa ruling. Basically, is and maybe an example of this is Colombia. So for you to actually get a consular visa is that you need to go to the consulate in Colombia, in this case, and request the consular visa so that you can enter to the country.
I see.
The same way is the restricted visa. There is one exception here to have actually this either consular or restricted, is that if you have a multiple entry visa, either for United States, Canada, or the Schengen, if I am not wrong, that's the name of the visa of Europe, then you can not prove or not request this consular restricted visa. If you have either of those visas, you can enter the country as any other tourist.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to go over that a little bit because I know a lot of people, this gets really deep really fast, right? All the little ins and outs and the terms in that. And I also wanted to go back a little bit because for people who've been looking into actual residency, some of these things are a little different, and it's kind of interesting. It seems simple, but maybe it's not so simple. So one thing on these documents that also has to be apostilled, are they, do we know, aren't they also going to have to get translated into Spanish?
Yes. I mean, there are several issues here with this actually requirements. Well, mostly regarding the dependents that does require both the birth certificates, marriage certificates, and all this documentation, is that at least in the ruling, they are not mentioning that they need to be apostilled, to be honest. They do request them to be translated into Spanish, but they are not requesting this to be apostilled. This is something very concerning because it's totally contrary to what the law says.
Right.
And yeah, so this is one of those inconvenience that we may anticipate at the time of applying for this digital nomad visas.
Do you think it may also be the case with people, because right now we have situations where, you know, people are born with one name. This applies to women more than anyone. You know, they're born with one name, and then, you know, you get married and you get a different name, at least in some countries. And then you get divorced, you know, like this paper trail of the name change. I mean, do you think they're just going to take a birth certificate and the marriage certificate to this new person, or do you think they'll want proof that, you know, you are who you are?
Well, they are not mentioning, at least in the ruling for this digital nomad specifically, anything about name changes. So my advice would be always to apostille those documents, because the only exemption of this apostille process is regarding the marriage, the birth, or, well, they are not even requesting background checks. So those are the documents that they are basically exempting from having an apostille on their own. And so any other documentation that comes from abroad, I would advise to get them apostilled or legalizing if it was the case.
It seems a little bit like this is clear and not clear at the same time, that they didn't quite go far enough with their instructions.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I don't know, maybe this is like maybe a political move or something, well, to gain more love in the people, and but at the end I do think it will cause some kind of complications with all the kind of applications that people will do, because well, the technicians in immigration, they do like to comply or something. They overthink some of the laws. So by having this contrary to what the law says, may have a lot of complications with the resolutions there.
Yeah. And you know, one thing we kind of forgot, at least I didn't think of until just now, when you're talking about these complications and these, you know, trying to comply and they haven't really filled in all the blanks, you know, of what they want people to do. They're saying they're going to approve these in what, 15 days? What do you think about that?
Yeah, actually, yeah, the ruling mentions that all applications with the digital nomads will be issue a resolution, or will have a resolution within 15 days. Well, I have around 3 or 4 years of experience working with immigration, and I have not seen that immigration complies with this time frame, not once. So if they cannot comply with at least what we work the most, that are residencies that they have 3 months, I don't think they will comply with 15 days, to be honest.
What do
So
you think about that, Rafa?
Um, I am with Alfredo about the processing time. Perhaps initially, you know, that there might be a handful that they would be able to process, but the something that we notice in our experience with the immigration department is that the employees, like at the case processors, they call them technicians. You know, so like at the immigration department, they have a room full of monkeys, you know, and processing all sorts of applications. And so these technicians, they're not, let's say, like a very well trained in what they need to do, and even for matters of just like a basic grammar, you know, of understanding matters of basic grammar. But then when it comes to technicalities, you know, and it becomes a lot more challenging. This application is supposed to be fairly easy, but the point that I want to make is that based in the history or what we have been able to witness all over these years with the immigration department, you know, with issues with training and perhaps the sophistication of the people working in there, we anticipate delays in this. And I think we have, for instance, like a no knowledge whatsoever whether they hire new people just to process this. You know, we don't know what allocation of resources they made to process this, and considering that the idea of doing this digital nomad, and to put it in perspective for people, last year the government passed a law, and probably many of the people in the audience today are aware of this. Prior to the digital nomad, the government question is that what can we do to increase revenue? What can we do to make Costa Rica more attractive? Is that, hey, let's pass this law to make some tax exemptions for people that are investors, rentistas, and retired people. And then, you know, after that law, they thought that, well, what else can we do? Is that now let's do this digital nomad law. Perhaps I can bring more people. You know, and if in their thought process, they believe that this digital nomad is going to bring a lot more people to Costa Rica, they didn't allocate the appropriate resources to handle that influx of applications with the immigration department. So the immigration department already has a hard time processing the current cases that they have. So I believe that while there might be, it would be probably a hit or miss. I think that probably at the beginning, there might be some cases that just because, you know, they want to prove themselves right, like, hey, we're agile, perhaps there might be some cases that they would process in a short period of time. But I think that I find it challenging, and I might be grown. I would like to be grown on this. But I find it challenging to believe that they will be able to process these applications in 15 days. So we need to wait and see. At the end of the webinar today, I mean, there is something that we would like to announce to people of that we aim to do in order to figure this out, but we'll save that to the end. Going back to your question, Debbie, we anticipate challenges in the processing times that are, you know, like we hope to be proof grown.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great, wouldn't it? The other thing I think would be great to talk about just a little bit that people are worried about are there like the tax benefits? Are there any tax implications? You know, what are people allowed to bring in if they're going to be a digital nomad? There's some confusion, I think, with some folks thinking that the overlay of the new law bringing in vehicles somehow extend to the digital nomad. I thought if you could explain that so people are clearer on that, that would be fabulous.
All right, and so yeah, that's a very good question. We notice, well, to also to give reference to people about what or continuity of the previous thought. Look, the digital nomad law got approved and regulated, approved by Congress and regulated by the Immigration Department. And the law for creating incentives for the rentistas, investors, and pensionados, or retired people, that law got approved before the digital nomad. That regulation has not been passed, particularly about the tax portion of the regulation by the Revenue Service. And the previous law that generates exemptions and benefits for people obtaining residency, it has been confused by some people in Costa Rica recently. A few days ago, we'll share an article with you later today correcting the record. But a few days ago, I think that on the 12th, the Tico Times published an article stating that people who obtain the digital nomad will have the benefit of importing two vehicles tax-free. That's not the case. I think that we just allocated as an error, an editorial error perhaps, or a confusion in the interpretation of the laws, between the law to attract foreign investors versus the law to deal with the digital nomads. So there are some tax exemptions, but I want to start with, it doesn't include duty-free for importation of vehicles. So the tax exemptions that are there is for the importation of personal items like household goods, and for people that are going to be, again, like in this digital nomad visa. Primarily, it is for the items, and I'm going to narrow. I said like household goods, but it's primarily for the items related to their trade, related to their particular area of expertise, considering that digital nomads work a lot with our computers, and so it is primarily for this type of equipment, and people that might be like photographers, and doing this type of work. So they will be able to bring equipment tax exempt to Costa Rica. When we think about people that do photography equipment is super expensive, and it is just not like bringing a little, like a camera. There is photography equipment that is like I don't know, many lenses, many cameras, so on and so forth. And people that are perhaps, a laptop might not do, and they might need a desktop for whatever work that they do. So it refers to matters like that. It does not apply, if there's somebody, perhaps, I don't know, biologists that things like I'm gonna go with a digital nomad and go do like samples of insects in Costa Rica. That's not digital, so like that equipment would not be exempt from from taxes, from importation taxes. So mainly, and also we'll share the article again that we published earlier. But it is like a laptop, a photographic camera, a tablet, and things of that nature that people can bring. Important distinction. This is applicable for the principal applicant, not for the rest of the family. So, if you're an adult, and you have kids that are like, I don't know, 18, 16, 20, and you bring your spouse, and all of them come like with all, they're all working remotely, and they're Instagrammers and influencers, and they have all of their equipment, and it is only applicable, all of these exemptions are only applicable for the primary applicant. The kids and spouse, they wouldn't be exempt from importation taxes for all of their equipment that they will bring in if they also need to do that, for their own work or study, so on and so forth. what it is called for is that if there are two spouses and they need to bring significant amount of equipment, so they need to apply separately. They need to have their own independent digital nomad for them to be able to benefit for these tax benefits. The tax benefits are not really huge. You know, it's primarily just like a personal belongings, again, like a photo, computer equipment, stuff of that nature. Something to keep in mind is that like, there's people that are planning, and there was a question in there, like if I apply for digital nomad now, can I change to residency later? Yes, you can do that. But any exemption, tax exemption that you acquire through digital nomad, it is not transferable to other type of residency. So if I became a digital nomad and I have these tax benefits for whatever equipment I brought into the country, and then I become a rentista or an investor, then by terminating, and this is to perhaps be as clear as possible, these benefits are applicable to digital nomads only, not to other residencies. So if I terminate the digital nomad visa or stay, so then my tax benefits terminate as well. You know, so then if I change category to other type of immigration category that do not receive this benefit, so then people are going to have to pay the duties for the importation of those items.
Okay, that's important for people to understand, because if you're really thinking that, you know, you should be under an actual residency category, it might be good to really think about that. Alfredo, could you just touch on a couple more things? Like once you get approved, there's another fee, I think, and then you also have to have medical insurance. Is that right?
Correct, yes. Well, once you are approved, you have 3 months to actually complete this last step of the process that it's called the documentation. In there, you need to pay, well, the fees that the same resolution mentions. I do believe it is $90 government fee, and there was one that is mentioning regarding the 251 article in the law that I do believe it, if I am not wrong, it is about $30, so on and so forth. So it could be around $120 of government fees. You need to also pay the warranty deposit or security deposit. Basically, this one is totally based on your nationality. So this fluctuates a lot depending on the nationality of the person. Another thing is, well, you need to take your passport that is in good condition. And regarding the insurance policy, you need to have an insurance that will cover at least for the whole time of the stay that you have been granted. And this is to cover for at least $50,000 in medical or any kind of medical condition that you may have. So an important thing here is that if you're coming with your family, each person needs to have an insurance. You cannot just request one insurance for the whole family. Each person needs to have their own insurance. So basically, those are the requirements to actually do this final documentation process.
Okay, I think that's amazing. It makes sense that each person would have to have coverage. I didn't think about it as they would each have to have their own policy. That's also going to be fraught with some confusion, just like when we went through the requirement for COVID insurance. So I think everybody's in. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So Rafa, you had mentioned that we need to talk about, you know, how Outlier, how we can help people who want to do the digital nomad visa. So what do you wanted to talk about that? So I think we're kind of at the end. Can you let us know?
Yes, so we're planning on doing a couple of things. The number one, the prelude to what we want to do, what I would like to say is that this process is new, you know, and while there is the law and there is the regulation, we don't know how it is going to work. We have been asked like, hey, are you going to be providing the service? Yes, we're going to be providing the service, but in all, being completely faithful to our clients, to the community, to our audience, we cannot provide a service for which we don't have a guarantee or security of how it is going to work. So we need to figure it out first, how it works. This digital nomad falls within a category of immigration benefits that is called stays. In immigration law in Costa Rica, there are visas, there are stays, there are temporary residencies, permanent residencies. There is citizenship and naturalization, but that doesn't fall within the realm of immigration in Costa Rica. It's a whole separate body of laws and regulations and institutions dealing with that. But going back to the description that there are visas, stays, temporary residencies, and permanent residencies, this digital nomad is a stay. We have processed stays before, and very successful, if I may say, about processing this. But this digital nomad is completely new, and as we mentioned earlier, we anticipate problems. We don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. We like to be cautious about this and understand what will be the actual issues in the processing of this. So these are the two things that we're going to do. Number one, we're going to process 20 and up to 20 digital nomad stays at no cost to the people who will sign up for this. So we will be sharing a link to contact us, and we'll give you instructions in a moment. It's just like our contact link. So to let us know if you would like to participate on this. I want to be clear, that we cannot provide specific guidelines or guarantees because we don't know how the immigration department is going to process this. I mean, we don't know how successful they're going to be. What we can tell you is that we're going to do our best to process this according to the laws and the regulations. So we would like to do these 20 initial digital nomads stays at no cost for the applicant. The thing that the applicants will need to cover and pay for will be the expenses, like the government fees, the translations, and obviously to pay the security deposit, to get insurance, and we will help you in part of that process. And but we would like to do this for free initially. We're not going to cover legal fees and for this. And people who do not know us, people who know us, they know this about Outlier Legal. We try to do as much as we can for the community, putting out information, advocating for the community, filing complaints against the government for whatever it is that we need to file a complaint for, but with this, we want to figure out for everybody's interest, everybody who is interested in this digital nomad, we want to figure out how it works. So the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to process 20 of these digital nomads with no legal fees, for the people who will participate in this. And again, the purpose of this is for us to learn how to do it. But then once we do that, we're also going to share a guide of how to do it. So we'll provide the service on our own, for people that might be interested in doing this, but also we're going to make the resource available for people who would like to figure out, how to do it on their own, so that they wouldn't have to figure it out. Instead, we'll provide the guide. So this will take some time, to complete because we want to map it from beginning to end. So and hopefully, again, being cautiously optimistic, hopefully the immigration department will be able to do this within a period of 15 days. So if they're able to process that in that short period of time, so then that means that we're going to be able to provide the guide in a reasonable amount of time. But we will be subject to the processing time of the immigration department to complete the guide and to share it with people. Also, we will be producing articles of this process, the hurdles, the challenges that we confront. We will be posting that in our blog, and also naturally it will be in our Facebook page and also in our Facebook group, so that people can see, how are we processing this, what are the challenges that we're facing, so on and so forth. So these are the two things that that we will be doing.
That's perfect. Yes, that's wonderful, Rafa. I think that that will be fabulous because this, as we've talked about during this webinar, it's certainly a new process. It's certainly not outlined as specifically as one would like to make sure that, you know, we're going to have all the little ins and outs of what they're going to want. And of course, we also don't know if they really have the staff to handle this. So I think people will really appreciate being able to be in as a test person with the first 20 and help us perfect, you know, what everybody else is needing, and also the document that you're talking about with the kind of the how-to. That'll be great. So I want to thank everyone for being here today. It was certainly fabulous. I know those of you that are on the webinar are probably so happy to finally learn the ins and outs of the Digital Nomad visa. I thank all of the people that came from Outlier and took their day to be with us to talk about this. That was certainly very nice of you. And I know that the people listening to the webinar are so happy to see some faces to go with people that they may have talked to on the phone or by internet or just chatted by email. Our next topic next week is going to be about the documents. Some people here on this call, on this webinar, we're talking about documents and asking questions. Well, next week is going to be the day for that. It's next Thursday. We'll be posting the information about that and about how to register in that. And it's called the paper chase for those of you who are movie buffs, so that everybody can learn the ins and outs of that. We're going to have Dawn, that Rafa talked quite a bit about, Don Drummer and Amanda Bolton here as our guests. And so people will be able to ask questions and find out everything about what documents are needed, perhaps for the Digital Nomad, along with our other residency categories. And also what you may need. We also do residency in other countries, such as Panama. And what'll be perfect is we will be able to answer those questions too at that time. This webinar will be posted later on YouTube and also on Facebook. And if you're looking at it on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to our channel, because all of these webinars will be posted there along with any other informational webinars and teaching that we want to do. And also, as I have said before, when you're doing that, if you could give us a thumbs up on the YouTube channel, it would really help us. So have a wonderful day to everyone. We hope we see you next week, next Thursday at the Paper Chase. And everybody have a great weekend. Thanks, guys. Ciao.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.